So I'm Edwin Black, and this is my second appearance at Congress in the last 2 years on the subject of human rights. I will begin this briefing in the same way that I began my last briefing for Congress for Representative Trent Franks on the subject of eugenics in the United States. And that is that I come here not as a Republican or a Democrat or a liberal or a conservative, but as a historian and investigative reporter who is concerned primarily with human rights, and I make no political distinctions. In fact, it is because I make no political distinctions and because I come at it with an apolitical point of view that the reason for my presence here is so apropos. It's been a long journey for me to get to this room. Really, it's the culmination of almost a half century of human rights investigative journalism going back to, I guess, the 60s and 70s. That's in the 20th century for those of you tuning in. And I've looked into the case of the Armenians, I've looked into the case of the Appalachians, looked into the African Americans in Jim Crow, the Native Americans, the Muslims, and the Mesopotamians, going all the way back in history, of course, the Jews and the Holocaust, because my Jews are Holocaust survivors. And I specialize in one thing, asking the question that must be asked, that everyone is afraid to answer. I can give you the parallel to when I wrote my book, IBM and the Holocaust. I saw an IBM machine as the very first relic at the Holocaust Museum here in Washington, D.C. But 6 million people had seen it before me, and no one sought to ask the question, what was IBM's role in the Holocaust? And of course, as we know, IBM organized all 6 phases of the Holocaust: the identification of the Jews, their expulsion from society, their confiscation of their assets, ghettoization, deportation, and even the extermination, and they've never denied it. When I did my book on eugenics, War Against the Weak, we talked about genocide by America against 90% of its own citizens by the greatest powers in this country, the intellectual elite, the progressive elite, fueled by corporate money and corporate philanthropy. The Carnegie Institution and the Rockefeller Foundation, which resulted in the sterilization of some 60,000 Americans and the untold erasure of untold numbers of people who were never born. And this is what got me into the realm of philanthropic abuse. And I became studied in the topic of charities who take their money for a non-charitable purpose and for tax money which is being misused. When I did my work on eugenics, this program that I wrote about was not a secret. It was law in 27 states. It had been passed and developed by the greatest political minds, legislative minds, medical minds, academic minds, judicial minds, but no one sought to ask the question, was this genocide? And of course, under international law, the destruction of this many people was, of course, genocide. About 10 years ago, I was assigned by the JTA, that's the Jewish News Syndicate, to investigate the Ford Foundation for funding numerous groups in the United States, in the UN Durban Conference against racism. And these organizations were blatantly anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist, anti-Israel, anti-peace. And when this investigation broke all over the world, some 20 members of Congress pressured the Ford Foundation to remove its funding from these groups. And that's exactly what the Ford Foundation did. And they channeled their money into a new organization. Name of that organization was the New Israel Fund. Now, over the past 10 years, Many people have come to me to ask me to take a fresh look at how taxpayer money is being used in Israel. We're spending a lot of money in this country to assist peace and reconciliation in Israel, because that is an American goal, that is an American value. But it turns out that my investigation documents that taxpayer money is actually financing the flames of confrontation and even terrorism. I'm going to be briefing today on policy, on what is wrong with American policy, what is wrong with American legislation, and what we can do about it. I'm going to start with one of the most astonishing facts that I found. American taxpayer money is fungibly financing terrorist salaries of Palestinian terrorists who are convicted and serving time in Israeli prison. And the more heinous their crime, the more of your money they're getting. Here's how it works. If a Palestinian terrorist commits an act of terror against innocent civilians, say a family or a bus with a bomb, or even just killing someone with a knife, that person immediately goes on an official Palestinian Authority salary. And that salary escalates under a law, a Palestinian law called the law of the prisoner. And the more heinous the crime, the more money the Palestinian gets. And these amount to some of the best salaries and the best compensation in the Palestinian Authority. We're talking about thousands of dollars a year, and we're talking about thousands of dollars each month. Now here's how it works. How do they decide what's the most heinous crime? They let the Israelis decide. It depends upon the prison sentence. So the sliding scale involves so much money for 1 year of prison, 5 years of prison, 10 years of prison, and even 30 years of prison. This money is paid directly to the prisoner during his time in prison. It's a reward for the act of terrorism. The prisoner is provided with a POA, that's a power of attorney, and he transmits that money for holding or spending to his wife, his girlfriend, his family, his buddies, his organization. In some cases it's the PLO, in some cases it's another terrorist cell. And where is this money coming from? The PA is constantly in the red, and it draws this money from donor countries such as the United States. This constitutes approximately $4 to $7 million a month and about 6% of the entire Palestinian economy. And it's a prioritized amount of money. That means if they got $1 million in the bank and they've got starving kids on the one hand, they'll pay the prisoner salaries first and they'll take care of the starving kids later. It's a priority. They have their own ministry, the Palestinian Ministry of Prisoners, devoted to overseeing and executing this program. And they have a quasi-governmental organization called the Prisoners Club that makes sure that if anyone tries to allocate monies in a way that will circumvent the obligation to pay the prisoner, this Prisoners Club will agitate within the Palestinian community. More than that, any attempts to stop that money will be shut down by the so-called Arab Street. This is not a secret program. This is a proud program. This is a program that the Palestinians consider to be precious. Not only do the individuals get a